Welcome to what I am considering my first real video on attacking the Star Wars timeline. This is pretty much going to be the first video for each series that I'm going to make into the canon storyline. Disney purchased Lucasfilms in 2014. They immediately established a new canon Star Wars timeline for all of the material. Anything else became Legends, and of course we're going to talk about all of it. They also announced their new trilogy.
They totally planned the whole trilogy out, obviously. Per Disney and Lucasfilms, everything outside of the movies and before their merge is Legends material. So it's not canon. And everything made after is canon. Books, games, comics, movies, shorts, almost everything you can think of, except for like some obvious children's books and the Lego series. Besides the movies made before the merge, they also brought with them the Clone Wars animated series. That was a surprise, and some people, regular fans, don't really even know that. So immediately, we were told the only canon material out as of this purchase was the 6 movies and the Clone Wars animated series. With that out of the way, I want to talk about how to understand the dates in Star Wars canon so you have a better understanding of key events. In this series of wars, Star Wars, so if you were a fan of Star Wars during the original trilogy, understanding all the terms thrown around is pretty simple. Unfortunately, and even after watching the original trilogy, myself as a kid, I was more aware of the plot of the prequel trilogies, since I was able to watch it as it was released, and I'm sure a lot of other people are in the same position as me. Interesting about what I just said is that Disney knows this too, and has recently started trying to change how the timeline is viewed, how it's talked about, by removing the acronyms used and just focusing on the eras. I will go in depth about this, but first, let's talk about the way the majority of fans still talk about different events in the timeline, which is the acronyms. There are 2 acronyms that are consistently used when referring to timeline placements. On this channel, I will use them, but I also will reference the movies that happen around the events, or things that are obvious like the destruction of the second Death Star, things along those lines. This way, any viewer can enjoy the content. We have BBY and ABY. These are the common acronyms. If you go on Star Wars forums, if you go Star Wars Wikipedia, that's what you see. And even as a Star Wars fanboy, I was confused about these until recently. The best way to think of them is that, well, not even think of them, I mean, it's kind of what they mean, but the best way to think of them is that BY represents Episode 4, A New Hope. BY stands for the Battle of Yavin, where the original Death Star was destroyed.
That's no moon. It's a space station.
So the B or A stands for before or after, respectively. BBY, before the Battle of Yavin, aka before Star Wars A New Hope, Episode 4. ABY, after the Battle of Yavin, so after Star Wars A New Hope. Alright, pop quiz. What date did Episode 4 A New Hope take place? It's 0 BBY and 0 ABY. Now, the standard year is used, which surprisingly translates to 1 year in our time, in real life time. The confusing aspect for me is that I would prefer it based off of Luke Skywalker's birthday, or, the end of the prequel trilogy, the birth of the Empire Day as it's called in canon. But this terminology was likely used in the early days of, the internet, the early forms. So it is still used today, as the prequels were not even made at the time of this lingo usage. So for a background into all my videos, let's set some dates, then talk about how Disney would like us to view the timeline. Rogue One happens in 0 BBY, A New Hope taking place simultaneously in 0 BBY and 0 ABY
means we can put Rogue One at 0 BBY for most of the movie, as well as for the rest of the original trilogy. We have an Empire Strikes Back happening 3 standard years later at 3 ABY, then Return of the Jedi a year later at 4 ABY. Now we have The Mandalorian, which takes place 5 years after Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, which would be in 9 ABY. There is a 30-year gap to the sequel trilogy and original trilogy, meaning Episode 7 and 8 are in 34 ABY, 34 years after A New Hope, after the destruction of the first Death Star. And Episode 9 takes place in 35 ABY a year later. As for the prequels, Episode 1 happens in 32 BBY, meaning 32 years before A New Hope, followed by a 10-year gap for Attack of the Clones happening in 22 BBY. See, it counts down now. 22 to 19 BBY is where the Clone Wars took place. So most of the Clone Wars animated series happened here. There are some episodes, I think, that happened during or before the other movies. But 3 years later, Revenge of the Sith in 19 BBY. So 19 BBY is when the first Empire Day was celebrated. 19 BBY is where the start of the newest canon material, The Bad Batch, takes place. 14 BBY is where we see Star Wars Fallen Order take place, so it's sort of in the middle of timeline we really don't know. Hopefully we get more of it in The Bad Batch, or we don't know what really happened there, but we have The Bad Batch doing it. We have the video games Fallen Order. We have Rebels, which is taking place in 5 to 1 BBY, which of course makes me want to see an extra season of Rebels that leads into Rogue One like we got with Clone Wars. Seems unlikely, but being able to see the lead up from Saul's point of view and Hera's involvement, maybe even some Leia involved, would be pretty cool. Let me know your thoughts on that one in the comments. Now, Disney knows these dates are hard to keep up with. There's no way you could just name them off the top of your head. I mean, I'm sure some people can, but even listening to me, you might have gotten lost. They want to make things easier, and I totally agree. It seems like from their point of view, Empire Day or 19 BBY is also where they decide to start their new lore. With one of the first big releases being a book we will soon talk about on this channel that explain the characters we meet in Star Wars Rebels. If you haven't watched this material or any of the animated material for that matter, I will let you know what you need to know, but I do recommend every fan binge Rebels as soon as possible, even Clone Wars. That's the best way to jump into the sort of extended universe outside of the movies. So Disney has broken the timeline into different eras and plans to bring us stories from each era as Star Wars content becomes more diverse, more people get a hold of the properties, more content is made. Hearing the name of the era will give you an idea of when it takes place. This timeline point of view became official this year when it was published in a recent High Republic book, which gave the High Republic its first placement as the first era, with a large separation to the next era, Fall of the Jedi, which is the prequel trilogy plus Clone Wars animated series. Next is Reign of the Empire era, the era I can't stop talking about. Here we have the Bad Batch, we have Solo. This is the era that starts at 19 BBY, and after a long gap we arrive to Age of Rebellion. This is Rogue One. The original trilogy starts here. It includes Rebels, the animated series. Instead of a long gap to the next era, we have the New Republic era, which includes The Mandalorian and all the related series to come, and leads into the final, as of now, trilogy, Rise of the First Order era.
Let the past die. Kill it if you have to.
I really hope that all sort of made sense condensing the era. That picture I'm using, or the context you see for the picture, it's official. It's straight from the books, straight from the Star Wars website. This is a guide to help you understand the canon timeline. On this channel, I plan to do a deep dive into the canon lore, so please join me. I will consider this, like I said, episode 1 into each series. Currently, I plan to start in the High Republic era and the Age of Rebellion era. I'm doing this because I want to make sure everyone has an understanding of the timeline in High Republic as it moves toward the Phase 2, and sort of go over what Disney has created since their merge, which pretty much begins in the Age of Rebellion era. I will avoid talking about any Legends material here unless specifically mentioned in my title for any speculation videos. Legends, if you didn't know, are books and media, not the movies, released before Disney merged with Lucasfilms, before they bought Lucasfilms. We will go by release date post the Disney merge, so it will be only canon material on this channel. I've read almost everything to this point, so if you think I should go out of that order on anything, shoot me a tweet, Admiral Strange on Twitter, or just leave a comment. We can talk about it. 2 things I am considering going over include starting early on the Galaxy's Edge series and going over things by character as well. An example of this would be a look at Thrawn's different books early, but for now, I am going to go through by release date so we can discuss the plots and reoccurring themes as they lead into the new movies, or likely how themes shifted after a movie added more lore. Alright, please like this video to help this channel grow. More likes means more videos, and tune in next week for more uploads. Maybe a few weeks, it'll happen. The first book I want to tackle is Star Wars: A New Dawn and start Phase 1 of the High Republic. We are all the Republic.
We're so original, yeah.